we'll do the live thing first. Like, hey everybody, welcome back to the Bigmark podcast. It's me, your host, Bigmark. If it's your first time watching, welcome. If not, welcome back. Like I always say, if you ever want to reach out to the podcast for any reason, let us know if you want to come on. Let us know how you feel about an episode. If you got an idea for a topic, always reach out to us. Check us out at the Bigmark Pod or at the Bigmark Podcast on Twitter or Instagram. There, you can hit us up in the DMs, hit us up in the comments on our videos on Spotify or YouTube. If you are watching on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Like the video and subscribe to the channel. And, we're always happy for any type of support, even if you just like to watch along. I always appreciate each and every one of you. And if you ever did want to kind of go a little bit extra, check out our Patreon, patreon.com/thebigmarkpod. We got a couple of different tiers there you can check out. So again, thank you all for being here. Your time is precious, and it is the best support you can possibly give us. So thank you so much for being here. And, if the description or however this video got to you was through intention, was intentional at least, that'll make more sense as the podcast goes on if you don't know what I'm talking about. But if you've heard of the book we're going to be talking about today, it's a book that invites us to question everything that we know about consciousness, energy, and reality itself. And the book is The Field by Lynnne McTaggart. It's a book that I have had on my shelf for a long time, but never actually read. I kind of had a general idea of kind of the subject matter, but it was really nice to finally sit down and read it. Lynnne McTaggart's writing is awesome, and she's an investigative journalist, and she's able to kind of put together all these different bits and pieces and really weave together a really coherent not only narrative but story and book that puts together this entire idea of the field. Again, that's what the title is, but we'll get into what that actually is in a second. But the first time I ever actually heard about this book was through the documentary I Am by Tom Shadyac, which is a phenomenal documentary, required reading or required watching for all the Bigmark podcast listeners. It's, I think, from 2010, so it's older now, but really, really well done. Tom Shadyac, if you recognize the name, and if not, he was the director of Ace Ventura, Bruce Almighty, Dumb and Dumber. I think a lot of, I don't know about Dumb and Liar Liar. I think maybe not Dumb and Dumber. Anyway, a lot of Jim Carrey things. He was kind of pretty essential in launching Jim Carrey's movie career anyway, as the director of all these movies. Obviously Jim Carrey's an amazing actor and everything in his own right, but Tom, phenomenal director, really cool guy, it seems. Was an athlete growing up, really high functioning, wanted to do it all, win it all, be it all, the American dream and all that fun stuff. And did so basically, all his hopes and dreams kind of came true, it seemed, directing all these movies, making millions and millions of dollars, buying these wonderful mansions in Hollywood and all these different things, and Beverly Hills and all that. And, he kind of looked around when he was sitting in those mansions and realized, he's not any happier than he was when he was living in a little one-bedroom apartment or whatever, right? And unfortunately, a lot of this self-reflection kind of came from a cycling injury where he got a concussion and developed post-concussion syndrome. And post-concussion syndrome is a pretty deadly situation to be in, because it's basically prolonged concussion symptoms for months to years potentially after your initial injury. So really, really bad, high suicide rate with a lot of post-concussion syndrome people. And again, luckily Tom didn't succumb to it, although he had some dark thoughts apparently. But a lot of the things that brought him out of it were reading and trying to do things, or probably listening to audiobooks maybe. But still, getting back on the horse and learning about a lot of things. You know, the key to that movie is it asks two questions: what's wrong with the world, and what can we do to change that? Which is such a wonderful practical approach to a lot of things. You know, it's not necessarily a look back on what has happened to the world. Yes, it's inevitable to answer that question. You got to kind of tell a little bit of a story, but it talks about what's happening in the present and how we can potentially get out of it. And he talks to all these people, Noam Chomsky, Desmond Tutu. There's tons and tons of amazing, big thinkers. And he is able to speak with all of them and sit down. And it's really funny. At the beginning of the movie, when he's starting, you know, he's introducing a lot of the people that he's going to be talking to in the movie. He kind of goes through this little montage of sitting down with the interviewees one at a time and asking them, oh, you know, like they probably asked him what his creds are, or at least he's given him his credentials, says I'm a Hollywood film director or whatever. And whether they ask, what have you directed? Or he just kind of says, you know, have you seen any of my movies, kind of thing. And no one has seen Ace Ventura. No one's even heard of Ace. Some of the guys anyway, never even heard of Ace Ventura, and like never saw the movies. And he was just like, that's fine. Like, you guys are academics and probably don't want to sully yourselves by watching, you know, that kind of lowbrow stuff, even though it's phenomenal. It's not coming from me. I love those movies. Trust me. But, and when he finally sat down with Lynnne McTaggart, the author of The Field, she was the only one who said Ace Ventura is one of her and her family's favorite movies. And it's such a funny point because he does, like, you know, plays hallelujah, all that stuff. Like he really zhuzhes it up in the movie too. And it's such a triumphant moment that finally someone he's talking to out of all these people actually has actually seen his movie. So tremendous, really good. So that was the first time I ever actually heard of the book, The Field, right? And it basically asks the question, you know, what if your thoughts are more than just fleeting mental chatter? And what if they actually had the power to shape your world? Now, the biggest thing about The Field is, well, the question is, what is the field? So imagine a universe not made out of solid matter, but of vibrations, of energy. Lynnne McTaggart introduces a concept called the 0-point field, which is a common field in quantum mechanics. Essentially, it's a vast sea of quantum energy that permeates everything. It's not theoretical, like I mentioned. It has been measured in quantum physics experiments, and even in a perfect vacuum, that remaining energy, there's always a little bit that a lot of physicists just have to round off. There's always a little bit of remaining energy, and they call that the 0-point field. And there's plenty of studies on it. Again, it does exist, and it's something that is very strange. You know, it's not just this background noise. In fact, a lot of these physicists actually believe that it may actually be the glue that's holding the entire universe together. You know, we kind of talk about dark background radiation and all these different things, and there's all like dark matter and all those things, you know, where we realize that we only really know about a percentage of the actual matter that exists in the world. Or in the universe, what else exists outside of all that stuff? And again, according to the researchers that McTaggart talks to, it may actually be the medium through which consciousness operates. Now, again, everything, you, me, you know, the chair you're sitting on, it's all connected in this field. Again, not metaphorically, literally. There's that idea of Einstein's spooky action at a distance, right? You know, if you took high school physics, they talk about it, right? That somehow two particles that have had some type of interaction, whether they're scattered, whether they're, you know, locally centered right beside each other or scattered across the entire universe, when one of those electrons changes orbit or changes direction of spin, the other electron immediately changes in the exact same way with no seeming connection. And that's baffled physicists and scientists for years. But it's implying that there is some connection. That's the only way we can possibly think about it with our fucking little monkey brains. But So, but is there actually something, string theory, all these things, is there actually something that those strings exist on, that this field, this ever-present place? And again, if it is this medium through which consciousness operates, what does that say about our thoughts, our intentions, prayer, all these things where people are hoping and wanting things so badly, is that actually changing things, right? And now there is evidence. There is people actually working on this. The entire field of noetic scientists, noetic science is looking at this. Noetics are basically the study of non-physical phenomena, I guess, or like, ESP, telepathy, different, being able to transmit, astral project. These things aren't, it sounds woo-woo nuts, but the fucking CIA was doing shit like this, man. They were doing like that whole Men Who Stare at Goats shit, MK Ultra, astral projection, all this shit. Project Starlink or Project Bluebird or some shit like that. It's absolutely, what I got to find out what the project is called, but it focused on trying to get operatives to be able to get, launch themselves into another world or whatever, that they can spy through the mind kind of thing, right? And Project Gateway, the Gateway Report. Anyway, sorry about that. I digress. But again, this is a real thing. This is stuff that people are actually studying. Dr. Fritz Albert Popp, he's one of the people who actually found out that living cells emit light. They're called biophotons. And it somehow seems that our bodies communicate through this, not just the chemicals. That somehow our bodies are within our cells and things. They are somehow communicating through this light emission. And again, the book goes into it a little bit deeper. Can't go into it too much today, but again, this idea that, there's even been studies now that I've seen the evidence of when they actually are witnessing the moment of conception, like when the sperm egg enters the egg, there's actually like a small flash of light. And again, there's like it's energies. We're talking about energy here. You got to remember, the field is this field of energy that exists, and if we live in this energetic world, who's to say that our brain is somehow interpreting this? And this is, again, a relatively standard concept in physics, is that most of our world that does exist, it is an interpretation of our brain. There's a lot of things that are a lot of information that we're intaking that our brain is omitting. Even color itself only exists in our minds because the universe is apparently colorless. And we're just interpreting different wavelengths of light and how those photons are bouncing off in my brain. So, like, we're already talking about this. This does exist. Sight alone works on this principle. So who's to say that there's other things that are happening? There's other communications. There's other ways that this energy exists. And, if light is a wave or a particle, it opens so many things, right? But Dr. William Tiller, he discovered that human intention could actually alter the pH of water, even when the person was miles away. You can look up his studies. At Princeton's PEAR lab, PEAR lab, scientists found that people could affect the outcome of random number generators with nothing but thought. So the PEAR lab at Princeton is it stands for Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Lab. So again, it's looking into all these things that have always irked scientists. Really, they've been these little things that don't really make sense according to the normal laws of physics that have always affected their outcomes. So they kind of started looking into this, but again, they found, and you hear about the observer effect, you hear about all these things, and I remember Neil deGrasse Tyson kind of talking about the observer effect as It's not necessarily coming from our human intention. It is more so our human intervention where, it's imagine you're trying to get a coin that fell between the couch cushions, and the deeper you reach to get that coin, the more you spread apart the cushions and the further that coin falls. So your act of actually entering into the situation with your experiment is potentially altering the environment. Again, relatively obvious, but however, at Princeton's Pear Lab, or at the Pear Lab, because I guess Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Lab is redundant, but at the Pear Lab, they did this study on these random number generators, and there's these random number generators that exist all over the world. Literally, what their job is to do is to spit out random numbers. That's literally what they're doing. And what they studied at Pear was, does human intention actually have an effect on those number generators, in the sense that is our intention, or whatever that is, affecting these number generators to then start making patterns? That was his kind of cue, was looking at these number generators. If they started making patterns and doing essentially what they're not supposed to do, something's happening. Now, again, the more you look into the experiments and stuff, right? Like, it's, again, an experiment, so who knows what's happening as far as outside intervention. But one of the stories that was actually in IM talks about, again, a lot of these things, noetic science talking about emotion, is talking about intention. A lot of these things aren't necessarily active thoughts or actions. These are thoughts and feelings and things like that. And a lot of times when a lot of people have these intentions and feelings at the same time together, it has a powerful effect. It at least has a powerful effect on the people in that fucking locality, i.e. at a stadium. If you've ever been to a live sports game and it's one of your teams that you're cheering for, and they score a goal or a basket or a point or a touchdown, you have this shared sense of elation with many people. Concerts, all these different things. Like, I remember, I've told this story before, but I remember in one of my classes, it was actually one of my sports ethics classes in university, was sitting in and it was like in a auditorium that was too small. Like, it was like either we just had too many kids that year, or that was where they put us in because the year before there was less kids in that class. Whatever. It was like every seat was taken. It was one of those lecture halls that literally every seat was taken. Only like 50 or 60 kids in the class, or 75 maybe, but like, again, jammed. It's a fucking jammed room. Everyone's sitting beside each other. I remember sitting beside my buddy Matt Van Prate, fellow football player and teammate, and we were sitting there, and we'd always be chit-chatting. And I remember this one big midterm coming up, and I was never really shook about midterms, especially when I was like, doing school. I enjoyed school a lot. I enjoyed the academia, and I loved being in an institution surrounded by people who are in active thought, and this, just like, I feel like you get in a groove when it comes to like critical thinking, and also like interpreting other people's information. And one of my biggest tenets in life is the sign of a intelligent mind is you're able to understand concepts without accepting them. You can understand ideas without accepting them totally as true or false or whatever. And that's something that's missing sometimes with people, right? It happens. Everyone's, I too am guilty of this, but when I'm thinking about things and trying to understand them, I'm not accepting them as something that's part of myself. It's a thought, it's an idea, it's a concept that exists outside of me. Yet to understand it, you have to enter into that world. And some people think entering in that world is you've gone into that and you're now one of them, whether that's a bad concept or good concept, that they can't even imagine themselves in that position. But again, that's the thing, is, like I said, you get in that groove. Once you start doing it a little bit, it's a lot easier to be like, okay, let me understand this concept as best as I can. Let me put myself in that situation as best I can. And then when I'm done, I'm going to take it and leave it. It doesn't become you. You don't become it. But again, these thoughts are very powerful, and to be able to be in that circumstance, it was always great. Anyway, I digress. I feel like I've got us off topic here, but the reason why I brought that up is we're all sitting in class and this midterm comes up, and all of a sudden, someone says, I don't think anyone even said anything, but we were just talking about the exam. Our professor was kind of laying it out and saying like there was like 2 or 3 essays we have to write during the exam. And trust me, this is a classroom full of kin students. No one wants to fucking write an essay. Fuck, we're in a science course because we're not good at writing essays. We're science people, at least most of us. And I can just feel this energy shift in the room, and everyone started getting nervous, and I was starting to get nervous. I'm like, fuck, man, like I never get nervous for this shit. And I looked around and said, oh, wait a minute. Everyone else is getting nervous here, and I'm just getting caught up in this. And then it completely changed my whole perspective on the thing. But I somehow was able to read that and sense that and know that. Who knows what people, even Maddie sitting beside me, but anyone sitting beside me going, fuck, I'm nervous all of a sudden, when maybe it didn't have to be, right? So again, these thoughts and intentions can be contagious when you're in a group of people. But this story that was brought up in the IM documentary actually talks about 9/11, September 11th, the attacks on New York City, obviously brutal. But these random number generators all around the world, the people who were watching them noticed they started making more patterns. Like, it wasn't like they were going like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Like, it was just less random. Literally, their computers made to spit out randomness, no fucking patterns. And they started making patterns. They started spitting out, numbers that somehow weren't as random as they should be. And it was because of, they think anyway, with this whole idea here, is that amount of energy of intention swelling out of New York City, and also going towards New York City from everyone around the world, around the country, around the everywhere, sending it to New. Like, man, I was a kid, like I was 10 when that happened, but it was like you could feel that shit, man. Like it was something palpable, man, something weird, and it was like it spread around the world, and it was good. It was a positive thing, because New Yorkers, being fucking tough cookies, they didn't fucking pout about that shit. They were on it, saving people, all the firefighters and first responders, R.I.P. and thank you for your service. And tremendous people from all over, all firefighters and paramedics and people from all over North America were driving there, man. Like, it was fucking real. But it was positive. It was a bringing together. It was all these people coalescing with this one huge major intention, and if not prayers and thoughts, and all these people hoping, I hope you find whoever's lost. I hope you find peace in the people who have lost people. All these things was powerful. It was something that I wish happened during COVID, which didn't, because of the nature of COVID. I think it just separated us more. But you hope for these moments of trials and tribulations that happen to humans, and they band together and they create this, because that's what it is, man. You talk about Darwin, you talk about all these people saying, survival of the fittest and all this bullshit. Cooperation and love is what brought us here, is what made human beings who we are. And there's something special in that, and I think we forget about that, and it could be measurable in the sense that there are these powerful feelings that are generated, but are they just chemical signals, or are they actually being, this Heart Math Institute that exists, it studies the heart's relationship with the world and psychophysics and all these different things, but one of the things that they study is the heart, emits electromagnetic bursts every time it beats, right? There's a electrical charge that runs through your muscles when it's an ionic electrical charge, but there's an electrical differential and charge that runs through all your muscles when they fire. And when that heart beats, it actually pumps out, and it would actually go for all your muscles when you move it all. But when your heart beats, it releases a steady relatively steady pulse, these electromagnetic pulses. And what the HeartMath Institute has actually discovered is there is some way that our brains are actually interpreting that signal. How that is happening is yet to find out. We don't know if there's an organ in the brain or something, and they've been finding, they just found a new organ in the brain, like region in the brain, I should say. And the brain's tough to study, man. It's very different from person to person. And I don't know if anyone else, I don't know if you know this, but when you open the body, it's not all color coded like your anatomy textbook, especially the brain. It's all basically one fucking shade of beige, and you can kind of tell under a microscope a little bit, but like looking at it, you can't really tell. And the regions of the brain are kind of like general regions that, like, when you're doing brain surgery, the patient has to be conscious, because if you hit the wrong spot, where, again, as a practiced brain surgeon, you have an idea of where all these regions are, but you're kind of still fucking poking around in the dark. And if you hit the wrong part of the brain, and your patient starts speaking Italian or something, you're not in the right fucking area. So again, you gotta find your way around, because even our general knowledge of the brain and those regions aren't perfect. So it's not surprising that we're still finding new organs and organelles, or whatever you want to call them, in the brain. So maybe there is something, maybe it is our heart itself that is the antenna for that, right? You look through a lot of history and even just colloquialisms or traditions and things, and art. You see the heart is the main thing. You don't talk about the brain as much. The heart is important. Is your heart true? The sacred heart, a lot of these things, the heart of the matter, the heart of the city, there's all these things that's like, yes, our heart is obviously important because it fucking pumps blood around our body, but is there something else to it? It's a known fact that there are more neurons innervating and, innervating, I guess, but going from your heart to your brain rather than from your brain to your heart. There's a lot of information that is being sent back to your brain from the heart. And, it's like baroreception. There's a lot of different reasons, but it's important, and who knows what else is there, right? So it's a very special thing. Who knows what it's all about, but there's something there. The HeartMath Institute actually has also done studies on intention through other organisms, and they've used fucking yogurt where they like put electrodes on a fucking petri dish full of yogurt, have you ask you a bunch of provocative questions. You're also hooked up to these same electrodes that is showing your output of thought. I guess they're somehow measuring your brain's energy waves that way. And they're matched by the yogurt's output. Super fucking strange. Again, that's obviously harnessing the bacteria that's in the yogurt. It's not just the fucking inert yogurt. It's like, the live culture's in there. It's just an easy culture to get a hold of and study because it's fucking simple. But is there something there, right? Now, don't get me wrong. A lot of these experiments aren't always widely accepted in mainstream science, but the data is there. Now, what McTaggart does beautifully is not claim certainty. She presents the research, shows the patterns, and asks us to look deeper. And this is what I'm asking you as well. Look deeper into this, right? Your consciousness and healing and intention, all these things that we're talking about. Like, what if healing isn't always about medicine? What if it starts with focused thought and all these things, like miraculous people beating cancer and all these things through prayer and all these things? Like, man, there was a fucking dude I did yoga with who... He was the teacher. He fucking taught me and my buddy in the class. Like, we went to a random studio and he was fucking teaching. We ended up shooting the shit with him after. And he said he was a quadriplegic. He had a full body paralysis from a baseball injury. And it was a fucking veg. And through thought and intention and yoga, was able to get back into fucking full fitness. And again, teaching the class, man. And I would have never known. So, like, what the fuck was that, man? Like, I remember hearing about that, going like, what the fuck? Like, what is that? What did you do? McTaggart shares numerous studies where groups focused intention on people in need. Again, healing occurred, like I said. It's not always, not in every case, but enough to challenge what we believe and what's possible. And it's not just about healing bodies. It's about healing relationships, societies, and even the planet. And that's why Lynnne actually launched the Intention Experiment, a global project to test whether coordinated intention can produce measurable change. And guess what? Sometimes it does. Like I said, when you get enough people together thinking about this stuff, being positive, and like that was the hardest part. Again, I keep fucking bringing up COVID. I'm sorry, but it was such every fucking day there was a story to just get less and less positive about, and that's what fucking hurt us. I wish we could do it. So let's think about this, right? If what McTaggart explores is true, the implications are massive. Education would need to focus on mental energy as much as intellectual development. Healthcare could integrate consciousness-based practices. Society might be shaped by collective thought, not just action. This means that we aren't passive observers. We're active participants and co-creators. Your thoughts matter, literally. And that opens up a whole new school of thought about, it does matter what you think inside. It does matter who you are. It does matter what you do. It does matter all these things that are your energy that you're putting out is going to come back, right? Karma, all these things, right? The love you get, the love you take is equal to the love you make, right? That's what Paul McCartney said. Again, obviously there's criticisms and a lot of things, right? Let's be fair, not everyone agrees. Many scientists argue the studies aren't reproducible or rigorous enough. And others, unfortunately, critique McTaggart herself and say that she's drawing spiritual conclusions from ambiguous data. Don't get me wrong. She is putting these things together. It's the same shit that fucking Graham Hancock gets for being an investigative journalist. Everyone gives these people that some type of knock on themselves. That's good shit, man. They're coming from an outside perspective with the ability to critically think, like I mentioned, and the ability to try to see these patterns that exist, that when you're in the middle of one small aspect of her entire research, you can't see the whole picture. You've lost the forest with the trees. But that's what happens with frontier science. It's always messy. It's uncertain. It's full of wonder and questions and unknown. You're going in fucking space, wherever it is. Inner space now is the new frontier, man. It's infinite. There's infinite outer and inner space. Now, again, we don't need to walk down these roads blindly, but we're talking about real science here. We've mentioned a lot of real fucking science. So, the field. It's not just a theory. It's a mirror, asking us to look closer, to take responsibility for the energy we bring to the world, and to realize we're all connected all the time. Now, if you like what you heard tonight, I encourage you to read the field, sit with it, let it challenge you. But I want you to leave with something today. I want you to try this. Set an intention, something simple, something kind. See what happens. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate each and every one of you. I've said this a few times on this podcast, but again, your time is special. Your energy is important. Listen to what we fucking talked about today. So I mean it when I say this. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time. And remember, you are not separate from the universe. You are the universe becoming aware of itself. Thanks for listening, y'all. I'll see you next time. Peace.